The Galactic Coalition's deep space exploration ship, Aurora, drifted silently through the cold darkness of the uncharted sector known as the Dead Zone. This part of space had earned its grim name over centuries because of the countless ships that vanished without a trace, swallowed by unknown dangers lurking in the shadows. Among these lost vessels was the infamous Class-210 Deathworld ship, a colossal warship believed to have been destroyed or lost in this very region decades ago. The Aurora's sensors had just picked up an unusual signal, faint but unmistakable. The unmistakable outline of the Class-210 drifting, lifeless and broken, or so it seemed. Captain Reyna stood on the bridge, her eyes locked on the holographic image glowing in front of her. The ship was a ghost from the past, wrapped in layers of dark metal and silent menace. The Deathworld had a reputation that struck fear into even the most seasoned spacefarers. It was not just a warship, but a living nightmare. The vessel's internal environment had been engineered to resemble a hostile, alien Deathworld, a place where even the most advanced machines struggled to survive. Its security systems were legendary for their lethal defenses, including automated drones, poisonous spores, and traps that could tear through armor like paper. Many believed that anyone who boarded this ship was doomed, and the stories of explorers who had vanished trying to reclaim or study it were whispered as warnings across the galaxy. Despite all the warnings, the discovery was too important to ignore. Captain Reyna had ordered the Aurora to approach slowly, mindful of every pulse and scan. The closer they got, the more strange the readings became. The ship's hull was scarred and dented, some parts missing as if something had tried to tear its way in or out. The eerie silence was broken only by the faint crackle of the Aurora's instruments. Then, something completely unexpected appeared on the scanner: signs of life. Not just faint biological traces, but active life forms moving inside the Deathworld ship. The team was stunned. How could there be life inside a vessel long thought abandoned and deadly? A wave of questions swept through the crew. Could it be survivors? Hostile aliens? Or some unknown threat waiting to ambush them? Commander Yolan, the lead scientist, stared at the readings, his brow furrowed. "Captain, the readings are consistent with human life forms, but they are shielded. Something is masking their presence from direct scans." The implication was clear. Someone or something inside the Deathworld ship was alive and hiding, Captain. Reyna called an emergency meeting with her officers. "This could be a rescue mission, or a trap," she said firmly. "We must prepare for anything." The team worked quickly, assembling a boarding party equipped with the latest protective gear and weapons designed to handle hostile environments. They knew the risks, but also recognized the chance to uncover secrets lost to time. As the Aurora closed the distance, the atmosphere grew heavy with tension. The Deathworld ship loomed larger, a massive silhouette against the stars, casting dark shadows across the Aurora's hull. Every sensor pulse, every system scan, heightened the crew's anxiety. The communications officer reported no response on open channels. "Captain, it's completely silent. No friendly greeting, no warning, nothing but the deep unsettling quiet of an abandoned ghost ship." Captain Reyna felt a chill despite the ship's climate control. She gave the order to begin boarding. The shuttlecraft detached and glided silently toward the Deathworld's main airlock. Outside, the shuttle's lights illuminated the jagged hull, revealing scars and deep gouges. The airlock, though battered, was intact, and the team prepared for the first step into the unknown. As the boarding party crossed into the Deathworld's interior, their helmets' lights cut through the thick darkness. The ship's corridors were unlike anything they had expected, organic and mechanical fused in strange ways. Walls pulsing with faint life signs, shadows twisting in unnatural shapes. Strange bioluminescent fungi clung to the surfaces, casting an eerie glow, while the distant hum of machinery echoed faintly through the air. The environment itself seemed alive, as if the ship were breathing. Every step forward was a careful dance between curiosity and caution. The team's scanners continued to show movement ahead, but the source remained hidden, elusive.
Suddenly,
a faint sound broke the silent, soft footsteps echoing from deeper within the ship. The team froze, weapons raised, hearts pounding. Was it a trap, or a desperate call for help? Slowly, a figure appeared from the shadows, a human, clad in worn but functional gear, eyes sharp and wary. The stranger raised a hand in cautious greeting, not a threat. The discovery sent a shockwave through the boarding party. Humans had not only survived here, they had thrived, adapting to the Deathworld's deadly environment. The stranger's presence challenged everything the team had believed about the ship and its fate. As the initial shock wore off, the stranger motioned for the team to follow deeper into the ship. Along the way, they saw signs of makeshift shelters built into the ship's interior. Strange plants cultivated under artificial light, technology cobbled together from both the Deathworld systems and human ingenuity. The survivors had created a hidden sanctuary inside a place meant to be a tomb, but the mystery deepened. Who were these people? How had they survived the ship's horrors? And why had they never sent a distress signal or tried to leave? The boarding parties. Questions hung in the air like thick fog, unanswered and urgent. Outside, the Aurora remained on high alert, its crew watching and waiting, knowing that whatever awaited inside the Deathworld ship could change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy, about survival, and about humanity itself. The boarding party followed the wary human figure deeper into the dark corridors of the Deathworld ship, each step revealing more of the strange, living environment they had entered. The walls pulsed with organic growths, and the air was thick with the scent of unfamiliar plants and faint electricity. It was clear now that this ship was no longer just a machine. It was a strange ecosystem, where technology and biology had merged in ways that defied all known science. The humans they encountered were not the frightened, helpless survivors one might expect. Instead, these people moved with confidence, their bodies showing signs of adaptation to the harsh environment's stronger muscles, sharper senses, and even subtle changes in their skin texture that seemed to protect them against the ship's toxic atmosphere. The leader of this group, a tall woman with piercing eyes and a calm voice, introduced herself as Mira. Her presence alone commanded respect, and she explained that her people were descendants of a mission lost centuries ago, a group sent to explore this very ship that was supposed to be a death trap. Over time, the original crew had perished, but those left behind learned to survive against the odds by changing themselves and the ship's environment. They had engineered biological enhancements using the ship's alien ecosystems combined, with their own technology creating symbiotic relationships with some of the deadly flora and fauna inside. These adaptations allowed them to breathe the toxic air, resist venomous spores, and even use some of the ship's natural predators as allies for protection and hunting. As the Aurora's team listened, a mix of awe and disbelief spread through their ranks. How had humanity, in isolation and without outside help, managed to survive and even thrive in such a hostile place? Myra's people had not only survived, they had rebuilt a civilization in the ruins of what was meant to be a tomb. Yet despite their accomplishments, they had remained hidden for centuries, avoiding contact with the outside galaxy for fear of being seen as threats or experiments. They had learned to trust very few, and the arrival of the Aurora's team was met with suspicion and cautious hope. Mira explained that the ship's original systems had been corrupted by time and hostile alien life forms, forcing the survivors to constantly adapt and fight back. The ship itself seemed to react to threats, with the environment changing to trap or harm intruders. But the survivors had learned to read these signals and control some parts of the ecosystem through a delicate balance of technology and biology. The meeting between the two groups became a tense exchange of questions and answers, with the survivors cautiously sharing their history while watching every move of their new guests. Captain Reyna and her team realized that this encounter was unlike any other. These humans represented not only survival, but the future of adaptation and resilience. Yet there was a lingering fear. If this story of survival ever reached the wrong ears, it could lead to exploitation or worse. The survivors' ability to thrive on a Deathworld ship made them both fascinating and vulnerable. As the two groups began to learn from each other, the Aurora's crew started exploring more of the ship's interior alongside the survivors. witnessing firsthand the remarkable engineering that had transformed the once deadly corridors into safe zones filled with bioengineered plants, clean water sources, and even energy systems powered by organic matter. It became clear that the survivors were masters of blending human ingenuity with the alien environment, creating a new kind of life, but the peace was fragile. The knowledge that the Deathworld ship could still be a death trap was never far from their minds. As the day ended, the Aurora's crew reflected on the incredible discovery. They had found more than a lost ship. They had found a testament to humanity's will to survive and evolve. The question now was what this meant for the future. Could the galaxy accept a new branch of humanity born from a ship designed to kill? Would these survivors be able to rejoin the wider world, or were they forever bound to the Deathworld? The answers were uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity's story was far from over. And sometimes, the greatest strength came from the darkest places. As the visitors from the Aurora spent more time within the mysterious ship, they began to uncover the rich and unexpected culture that had grown among the survivors of society born not from comfort or convenience, but from relentless struggle and unwavering determination. The colony they found was more than a shelter. It was a living community shaped by the harsh environment around them and the constant battle to survive. The survivors had developed a deep and complex relationship with the ship's ecosystem, learning to live in harmony with the very dangers that had once threatened to destroy them. What had once been a place of death and despair had become a carefully balanced world where humans and hostile life forms coexisted in fragile peace. The visitors were amazed to see how the survivors had tamed some of the ship's deadly creatures, using them not only for defense, but also as companions and helpers. Giant insect-like creatures that had once been feared were now part of the colony's daily life, their keen senses alerting the inhabitants to danger long before it arrived. Strange plants that emitted toxic spores were cultivated in protected areas, their poisons harvested and repurposed for medicine or tools. This symbiosis was the result of centuries of trial, error, and innovation. The people had become experts in bioengineering, blending alien biology with human technology to create new tools and weapons that fit their unique needs. Their homes were built not just from metal and stone, but from living organisms shaped by careful cultivation and genetic modification. The halls echoed with stories passed down through generations, tales of ancestors who had faced the unimaginable and refused to give up. This culture was rooted in resilience, a fierce pride in surviving where none should have. The community's leaders emphasized the importance of unity, trust, and adaptability. Every individual had a role, and each contribution was vital to the group's continued existence. There was no room for weakness, but also no one was left behind. The visitors watched as ceremonies unfolded, simple rituals that honored those who had fallen and celebrated milestones of growth and invention. The survivors' language had evolved, enriched by new words born from their unique experiences and environment. Their art was a mixture of traditional human forms and alien influences, expressing hope, struggle, and respect for the life that surrounded them. The team from the Aurora soon realized that these people had transcended mere survival. They were pioneers of a new form of humanity, a branch of the species that had adapted to thrive in the most hostile conditions. Their bodies, minds, and society reflected a fusion of biology and technology that pushed the boundaries of what it meant to be human. Yet despite their remarkable evolution, the survivors remained deeply connected to the legacy of the galaxy they had come from. They cherished stories of Earth and other worlds, keeping alive the memory of a home they might never see again. This blend of old and new created a powerful identity, one that inspired both respect and wonder in the visitors. As the days passed, the visitors and survivors began to share knowledge, exchanging ideas and experiences. The Aurora's crew taught about the wider galaxy's advances and dangers, while the survivors offered lessons on adaptation, survival, and the value of community in the face of overwhelming odds. This exchange sparked hope that the two groups might build a future together, one where the strength of the survivors could complement the resources of the coalition. Beneath this hopeful interaction, a shadow lingered. The Deathworld ship, with all its dangers and secrets, still held many mysteries. The survivors warned that the ship's ecosystem was unpredictable and could shift suddenly, turning friend into foe. The visitors understood that living in this place required constant vigilance and respect for forces beyond their control. Captain Reyna and her team left the colony that day with a new appreciation for what humanity could endure and become. They had witnessed a culture forged in fire, where every moment was a battle and every victory a triumph of spirit. The survivors, inside the Deathworld ship, were not simply remnants of a lost mission. They were a symbol of humanity's unyielding will to adapt, evolve, and conquer even the deadliest challenges. The galaxy would soon hear their story. It would change the way people thought about survival, strength, and what it truly meant to be human. The moment the news of the survivors inside the Class-210 Deathworld ship spread beyond the confines of the Aurora and the hidden colony, the galaxy's interest ignited like a flare in the darkness. What had once been a forgotten ghost ship now became a prize to many, some with noble intentions, others driven by greed and fear. Scientists clamored to study the survivors' unique biology and their symbiotic relationship with the ship's ecosystem, hoping to unlock secrets that could advance medicine, technology, and bioengineering. But alongside these hopeful voices came darker ones, factions known for ruthless tactics. Mercenaries hired by powerful corporations and warlords, eager to claim the ship and its inhabitants as trophies or tools for domination. These mercenaries saw the survivors not as people, but as resources to be exploited or obstacles to be destroyed. The survivors, who had spent centuries building their sanctuary in silence, suddenly found themselves facing threats from beyond the ship's walls. When the first mercenary fleet arrived, their massive warships blotting out stars like predators circling their prey, panic gripped the colony. Captain Reyna and the leaders of the survivors quickly understood that survival would no longer depend only on adaptation to the ship's environment, but on their ability to stand together against an external enemy armed with overwhelming firepower. Despite their advanced symbiotic technology and intimate knowledge of the Deathworld's lethal ecosystem, the survivors were outmatched in sheer numbers and weapons. The visitors from the Aurora offered their support, realizing that this fight was not only for the future of the survivors, but for the very idea of humanity's resilience. They began to prepare for war, combining the survivors' unique environmental defenses with the tactical expertise and advanced weaponry of the Aurora's crew. The survivors used their bond with the ship's ecosystem to set traps in the twisting corridors, and bioengineered creatures patrolled the outer areas as sentinels. Poisonous spores were released in calculated bursts, disabling or disorienting invaders. The mercenary forces, confident in their technology, soon found themselves lost in a living maze that attacked their machines and minds. Ambushes came from hidden lairs, where genetically modified predators struck with deadly precision. The battlefield became a deadly game of cat and mouse, where every corner held danger and every shadow could be an ally or an enemy. The survivors and visitors fought side by side, their unity and creativity their greatest weapon. Captain Reyna coordinated the defense with calm determination, inspiring both the new allies and the battle-hardened survivors. Every moment tested their willpower as the mercenaries pushed harder. Determined to break through and seize control of the Deathworld ship, the battle raged for days, with losses on both sides, but the defenders refused to surrender. Leaders unprepared for such fierce resistance from what they had thought a trapped, helpless group began to question the cost of their mission. Slowly, the tide turned as the defenders' knowledge of the ship and their combined strength wore down the attackers. In the end, the mercenary fleet was forced to retreat, battered and broken, leaving the survivors' home intact. The victory was hard-won, but it proved something greater than technology or numbers. It proved the strength of human spirit when faced with destruction. As silence returned to the ship's dark corridors, the survivors and visitors looked around at the damage and the lives lost, knowing this was only the beginning of their journey. The galaxy now knew about the Deathworld survivors, and their story would inspire many, but it also meant new challenges would come. For now, they had proven that humanity could unite, adapt, and fight back against the darkest threats. Their resilience had turned a death trap into a fortress, and their unyielding spirit shone brighter than any weapon. The battle for the Deathworld ship had ended. But what followed was an even greater challenge and opportunity, the chance to turn a haunting relic of war and death into a beacon of hope for all humanity. With the mercenary fleet driven away and the immediate danger past, the survivors in the Galactic Coalition found themselves standing at the threshold of a new beginning. Both sides, once wary and uncertain, realized that the true strength of this discovery lay not just in the ship itself, but in the people who had made it their home. The survivors, hardened by centuries of struggle and transformation, had become living proof that humanity could endure the impossible, adapt in ways no one imagined, and thrive in environments designed to kill. Captain Reyna and Mira, the survivor leader, met aboard the Aurora to discuss the future. Their conversation was cautious but filled with a shared determination to protect and nurture this fragile new alliance the Galactic Coalition offered. Resources, technology, and protection. While the survivors shared their unparalleled knowledge of bioengineering, adaptation, and the Deathworld's ecosystem. Together, they planned to make the ship a research hub and a symbol of resilience. News of the alliance spread quickly throughout the galaxy, sparking curiosity and admiration. Scientists and explorers, diplomats and traders, all looked to the Deathworld ship with new eyes. What had once been a forbidden zone transformed into a frontier of discovery. A place where human ingenuity met the unknown and came out stronger. The survivors welcomed new visitors cautiously but with hope, eager to share their story and learn from others. Their culture, once isolated and secretive, began to open, offering lessons in community, resilience, and respect for life even in its deadliest forms. The story of these people became a legend, told in countless star systems, how humanity could survive the darkest horrors, adapt beyond expectations, and create a new future where others saw only death. Their journey inspired a wave of exploration and cooperation across the galaxy. New missions were launched to study other dangerous regions, equipped with the knowledge and spirit learned from the Deathworld survivors. The Galactic Coalition established programs to help isolated human colonies adapt and thrive in hostile environments, applying the lessons of resilience and unity that had saved the ship. More importantly, the survivors' example reminded all civilizations that true strength came not just from weapons or technology, but from spirit, the unyielding will to survive, to adapt, and to grow. The Deathworld ship stood as a monument to this truth, its once dead corridors now filled with life, laughter, and the promise of a better future. As the years passed, the survivors and their new allies continued to explore the mysteries of the ship and its ecosystem. Together they uncovered secrets that reshaped human understanding of biology and technology. The boundaries between species blurred, and the line between machine and organism became a new frontier for science and philosophy. Captain Reyna, Mira, and their people watched with pride as the galaxy changed. Influenced by the example of those who had refused to die in the darkness, they knew challenges remained threats from beyond, old fears, and the ongoing struggle to balance adaptation with identity, but their success had rewritten what was possible. Humanity's new chapter was not just about survival, but about transformation and hope. The story of the Deathworld survivors was a beacon shining through the vast emptiness of space. A reminder that even in the deadliest places, life could find a way to endure, evolve, and inspire generations to come.